बूटी लाई हूँ पीर मेरे
चुकनी जी
ए भी अल्लाह वाले आंदी
चुकनी जी
ए भी अल्लाह वाले आंदी चुक चुकनी जी चुक चुकनी जी चुक चुकनी जी चुक चुकनी
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Asia Society. Tonight's conversation on threading the contemporary, visualizing gender and tradition in the art of Anne Samat. Uh, my name is Boon Hui Tan. I'm the Vice President for Global Arts and Culture and Director of the Asia Society Museum. Thank you all for coming. I know it's a very sort of hectic time with Freeze Week and TFAF coming. So all of you are among the privileged and you have good taste that you choose to come and listen to Anne Samat and learn a little bit about her work. I used to be, in my previous life, among various things, I used to be curator of Southeast Asian ethnography. And one of the things that I tendentially dealt with was textile, for the simple reason that I was curator of metal work. And in Southeast Asia, and how it relates to looking at Anne Samat's work, in Southeast Asia, in most of the cultures, there is a kind of duality between metal and cloth, between the metal and cloth, especially cloth made of textiles and later, silk and supplementary gold threads and so on. And it has to do with a kind of worldview where, in important points in life, such as in marriage, there will be a kind of unity of the male and the female. So metal was always hot and it was always the male, and textile, thread, cloth would be cool, and female. And in a lot of marriage ceremonies throughout Southeast Asia, especially if you were from the nobility, it was very important that at a certain point there was a kind of exchange of these two things together. So even as a curator of metalwork and jewelry, I had to know about the other side, the other part, the other side of the coin. And when I first came upon Anne Samat's work, I was very struck by, even though it clearly belongs in a contemporary idiom, that how much emotional resonance there was when the work is actually displayed to those that sort of understand this kind of gendered view of the world in Southeast Asia, that this exchange between metal and cloth, between metal and thread, was not about separation but about a kind of union. And certainly we live in an age where we need more of this kind of union and communion, so to speak. So we're very happy to, on the occasion of Anne Samat's residency up in Peekskill, that is fielded by the Hudson Valley MOCA, to have this conversation, which will also review a little bit, hopefully, about the work that she's been doing in the residency that will culminate in a work, in an exhibition, which we will tell you more about later, basically, slightly a week later. First and foremost, thank you all for coming, and especially I know some of you are members. A special thank you to all our members. I've always said this, the same litany of lines, but it's always worth saying, you are our fans, we love you. Okay, you always come, you're always in our heart. We treasure you because you support us with passion. Certainly there's no food outlet here, so evidently you're coming here before dinner, so thank you for that. We hope to make the evening special for you, and you go away with something. Just a little bit of advertisement. On May 23rd, we have a very special event, the Asia in America Next Generation Party, where we celebrate the achievements of Asian Americans, and we hope you come and celebrate that with us. All the information is available on our website, www.asiasociety.org. Housekeeping, please turn off all cell phones, put them on silent. No photography or recording is allowed. The program is being broadcast live. We have a long-standing tradition of live broadcasts, as well as many people watch the program after the event in our video archive. And it will be posted within a few days on the Asia Society website. And without further ado, I would just want to introduce the two panelists and speakers for the evening. The first person that will come on is Livia Straus, who is co-founder and board president of the Hudson Valley MOCA. If you haven't been and you live in New York, shame on you. It's only 1 hour away from Grand Central. Please use your Google Maps and check and go up and see Anne Samat show. Okay, formerly known as the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art, Livia is an educator who has lectured widely on art and spirituality. She's currently the Professor Emeritus of Education and Jewish Religious Thought at the Academy for Jewish Religion, and she was formerly the Adjunct Professor of Theology at Fordham University, among other prestigious positions. Livia Strauss has also served on the boards of the Neuberger Museum of Art in Purchase, New York, and the Hebrew Union College Museum in Manhattan, as well as participated in various capacities at other institutions. What she didn't put is she's a really wonderful human being. And I say this having only met her recently, who really supports and really loves art. And I always say, believe it or not all collectors actually love art. I think what she's done is also really amazing, and the fact that she is giving a residency together with her husband, is giving a residency to an artist from Malaysia, who is a contemporary artist that works in weaving. So you see how many loops there are that we're talking about. I think that's really amazing. So Livia is going to give us a little bit of background, particularly to the kind of work that is being done at the Hudson Valley MOCA, which has led ultimately to this residency, and why she has chosen to work with Anne Samat. So Livia, please.
Oh, there are steps. So thank you all for joining us this evening. The residency program, I'll speak a little bit about the Hudson Valley, but the residency program has been a gift not just to the museum and to the artists, but of course to Mark and myself, because we get to meet people like Anne and to spend time with them and to have them really as part of our family. So thank you for joining us. Our pleasure. We want you back again and again and again. And we have help with that, with the Asia Society. So just to give you a little background, I'll start with this. So as Boon mentioned, we've rebranded this year. Up until now, we've been known as the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art. You learn a lot from the very beginning as to what it's easy for people to say and not to say. HVCCA was a mouthful, so it's a lot easier now to say Hudson Valley MOCA. And it is indeed a contemporary art museum. So the museum itself is housed in a fairly industrial-looking building. It's basically a black box or a big box. That's a cinder block box, and you can see on the outside it says "What's outside that counts," done by two local artists actually from Brooklyn, as part of a large festival that the museum hosts on a regular basis, the Peekskill Project, where we have one of our artists from a past Peekskill project here with us tonight, Lana. So Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art, those letters are no longer there. They've been removed. And this is our future. So we're looking to reface the building. We have a capital campaign going under the eager guardianship of Effie Phillips, who's here tonight, who's our executive director, and the staff of the Hudson Valley MOCA, Adrian and Francesca. This is the city of Peekskill. So Peekskill was basically a small industrial city along the Hudson River. So the Hudson River is a beautiful geographic location, but has been a fairly depressed area until more recently. So many of you know Dia Beacon is now up in Beacon, New York, and Hudson, New York has become a haven for a lot of artists. So that whole trail up the Hudson River now has really been revived through the arts. But this is City Hall in Peekskill. And this is the downtown. Peekskill was originally a Dutch village. It was settled. The first settler there was Jan Peek. He was given the territory, the property along the Hudson River. And Peekskill was known actually originally for its production of wood-burning stoves, and now has come a long way and is really known as a haven for the arts. This is the interior of the Hudson Valley MOCA. Our exhibitions are always international in scope. They're theme-oriented. The museum has now been in existence for 16 years. We celebrated our 15th anniversary last year with the rebranding, and for the first time since year one, the first year we opened the museum, we had an exhibition from the collection. Right now, the exhibition is again from our private collection. The museum itself is a Kunsthalle. It does not collect art. This is also part of the current exhibition. This is a work by Sam Jinks. The previous work you saw was by Villa Rojas and had been on the roof of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And this is a small work that was part of an exhibition in the upstairs, the mezzanine area of the gallery. This is by a British artist, Anne Smith. So she had her first showing in the United States at the museum, and many of the artists whom we've shown have really gone on to have international reputations. This is one of our education programs. It's actually adult education and youth education. And this is a poetry workshop where we're dealing with ekphrastic poetry, poets and students who come in and write poetry that intersects with works of art. More of our education programs. We now service over 4,000 children through our education programs in Peekskill. We have all of the Peekskill students now coming through the museum as part of their educational initiatives. And this is a drawing class, adult education, so adults can come in and they can draw within the context of the art exhibition. This is the waterfront. So I mentioned before the festivals that we do on usually a bi-yearly basis. This is called the Peekskill Project. The sculptures you're seeing on the waterfront were all directly the result of the various Peekskill projects. So the piece on the side, the ring, basically frames the geology of the area. The diver on the left has become, it's by Carol Feuerman, has become really the imagery that's used for Peekskill. So when you look up what's doing in the city of Peekskill, you will see the golden mean or the diver. And then the piece on the bottom with the beach ball is by a Korean artist, Jung Oh, who got his start at the museum in one of our graduate shows. And he won an RFP to do the sculpture on the waterfront. So an artist who usually does invisible work, doing a very large-size sculpture. Aside from the education programs, one of the hearts of the programs at the museum is our residency program. And we've had residents that come. The goal generally of the residency program, with few exceptions, is that we have artists from other countries, because that way we build a dialogue in the community with the other artists in the community and with the members of the community in terms of the challenges facing artists in other countries, the differences in approaches to the art and the construction of the art, the cultural influences on the art that's produced, and on and on. So this is by a British artist, Chris Jones, who was very influenced in living in Peekskill by the stories that were written in the Hudson Valley, especially the stories of Washington Irving. So the story of the Headless Horseman, this is a full-size stagecoach with a headless horse, a full-size horse, all made out of magazine paper and encyclopedia paper. This is an artist from the Netherlands, Karen Sarksian, who dealt a lot with music and art. So these are large-scale dolls that he produced out of paper, and he integrated operatic music in it. So an artist originally from Armenia and then living in the Netherlands. Korean artists. Why did it mark? I just lost it. There's Jinsu. So Jinsu Han, and these are all robotic machines that he produces. So this is a paintbrush that produces its paint. I have to share one story with you. So we had young students come in to work with Jinsu. So these were students from a local school that's a Spanish-English school. It's a bilingual school. And he was very nervous. I said, Jinsu, they're going to love you. And he said, but they're not going to be able to understand me. I said, that's why they're going to listen very quietly to see if they can understand what you're saying. And he produced these wonderful installations. They all brought bowls in that they had to fill with water. And he explained to them that in his culture, the body is like a container of water. And when you drop something into the water, the ripples create memory and history. So that's what the students did. And he showed them how to do robotic rocks that dipped into the water and then lifted and created these whirlpools. And this is an artist from the Czech Republic, Daniel Pitten, who was working a lot with blueprints, old blueprints from his grandfather, collaging them and creating these beautiful collaged paintings that were also influenced by his stay in the Hudson Valley. And last but not least, Anne Samat. So we were introduced to Anne, actually by Ken Tan, who was very excited by her work. Ken is a close friend and my husband's partner in the gallery. And he was very excited when he saw Anne's work. And he said he met her and she's lovely and we should bring her to Peekskill and let her do a residency. And Anne came to us almost 3 months ago. She's living in Peekskill in a beautiful studio that is shared by a wonderful, very, very kind, very generous, and very community active artist in Peekskill, Lana Yu, who was so excited by having Anne come. And of course, Anne arrived exhausted, a little sick, needed some tender, loving care, and thank goodness Lana was there to really serve as a sister and as somebody who really cares. So this is Anne in her studio. You can see it's a beautiful studio. Peekskill has artist live-work spaces that were federally subsidized. And many of the artists who were lucky enough to get in at the beginning have these exquisite live-work spaces. Not a lot, but some of them, like Lana, agree to host some of our artists in residence. And of course, in spite of the 2 cats, we have Anne working with all this fiber. So Anne's show will be coming up at the museum, opening on May 9th. I asked Anne for a few images of earlier work that she produced so that we could get a feel for the whole breadth of her work. So this is Anne in front of a loom doing her original weavings that were really quite gorgeous. So this is a close-up of one of the weavings that she had done. It was a framed weaving and more from a distance. You can see the integration of the beading in it, and Anne and I had the delight to go into one of the local craft shops where we were surrounded by all these wool and all these beads. It was a great experience. This is like an exquisite piece, the Alpha and Omega, the folding of the woven materials and the colors that are used in it. This with the beading on the bottom. And this. So, you know, working with an artist in residence like Anne, Mark and I were just in Brussels, and we went into this one artist's space, not an artist space, a collector's space, an exquisite space. And we said, oh, you have to see the work of this wonderful artist in residence that we have, Anne Samat. She says, I know Anne. I love Anne, right? So we got into this whole conversation, and lo and behold, she had one of Anne's pieces hanging in her installation. But this is Anne in her studio. I still remember when we went into Home Depot the first time, and she saw these huge wall-size rakes, and it was like, wow, what am I going to do with that? So Anne again. And these are the types of weavings, the types of wools that are available in this shop that we found in A.C. Moore. So I think Anne is on the A.C. Moore love list for the rest of her life, whether she comes, stays here, or goes back. And these are some close-ups of the works that are being produced for the exhibition on May 9th that will be opening. And this is the initial part of the installation at the museum, and it is exquisite. So I think that the goal of the residency is always to give the artist time, focus time, not to have to worry about a lot of other things, just to focus on their work. And to know that the goal is that at the end there's going to be a major solo exhibition. And there will be coverage and there will be people visiting it, and that there will be exposure to the general community in terms of the art. So I hope many of you will join us on May 9th up at the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art to celebrate the opening. If you can't make it up May 9th, if you can't make it up to the opening, then come afterwards. We're open during the week. We're open from Wednesdays through Sundays. So please join us. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I need to take the. It's much easier if we look at the photographs. Let me just go back. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about. I think we'll start from the beginning.
Okay,
Let's
sure.
talk about.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about weaving.
Yeah.
I mean, you are quite unique in the sense that you actually, when we say you started as a weaver, you literally studied like in school.
Sure. Yeah.
Traditional weaving, traditional Malaysian weaving. Can I ask why you started that, and then what was the experience? I mean, what was the purpose of that?
Okay.
That school, was it literally to produce, traditional weavers? Or?
Yeah, I'm actually from University Technology Mara, which is based in Selangor, Malaysia. And of course, when we talk about, School of Art and Design, you have, I have a few choices, which is I can go straight to study fine art, ceramic, fine metal, graphic, which is quite popular during my time, or textile. And I know from the very beginning that when I joined that university, what I really want to do is I want to do something different, something that I have zero knowledge of it. So in a way of graphic design, in a way of fine art, which is I love it. But the thing is, I said, okay, there's a lot of people out there, into that department. So I said, let's try something different, which is textile. Which is, again, when we talk about textile, we have printing, we have batik or ikat or resist. I think in the international words, they call it resist, right? And I said, okay, that's quite interesting. But what is the thing that really caught my attention by that time is actually the weaving, which is, I said, I got zero knowledge about it. And I think it is a right time for me to do something different. It is for me to challenge myself, to learn something that I don't know, to learn something that I feel that I can challenge myself, to see where I can go. Don't ask me what is going to be, how I'm going to be, or what I'm going to be in the future. But that's the thing for me. The best part is the challenge that to the unknown path, to the unknown journey that make me into it.
Yes, and in our previous conversations, I think that theme comes out a lot as to why you make certain artistic choices each time, and a lot of it has to do with you challenging yourself to go into an area that you have not been. That's not the barrier. Actually, that's the inducement to go there.
Exactly. That is actually the way that I look at it. It is the opportunity for me to actually again, as I said, to challenge myself to see how further I can go.
So you started off, as Livia has said so beautifully, with literally the traditional loom.
Sure.
And what the traditional loom does is produce flat. I mean, literally.
Two-dimensional fabric.
Two-dimensional fabric, which a lot of it is meant for the body. Some of it may be ceremonial hangings, but literally it's two-dimensional. So, these earlier, very exquisite sort of works wall pieces.
Yeah, that
I
one.
think you call them. But already by this time, I mean, these are not really traditional weaving, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the patterning and the motif is, even the color scheme is departing quite
On
drastically.
top of that is the materials as well.
Yes.
I mean, from the very beginning, from the early stage,
Yes.
I decided when I look at the loom, I said what I really wanted to do is I want to learn the basic technique, how to handle that traditional loom. But I know from the very beginning that what I wanted to do is I want to produce something different. That's the reason why even though you see
Yes.
from my earliest work, it's already started to become a three-dimensional thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually based, the technique, everything is based on the traditional technique.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what kind of material were you using in this? work?
Back then, even from the university,
Yes.
a lot of weavers, I mean, if you talk about weavers in general, we are not talking about just in Malaysia. If we talk about the weavers all around the world, normally they will use thread as a warp
Yes.
and thread as a weft. But again, I'm still maintaining that thread as a warp, but I give a twist by using the rattan stick, which is I hand painted everything. Every single stick, I'm actually hand painted it. That's why you can see that's colorful over there, all the color weft. So instead of using the thread as a weft, I give a big twist using the rattan stick. So from there, you can create the dimension. You can create thicker layers or thicker base of the work, which is it creates more interesting, more dimension to the work itself.
I mean, the first time I saw these things, the first thing that occurred to me was really you are sort of interrupting. You are deliberately disrupting this normal
Yeah.
flat surface because the weave goes this way, right? But what she does is suddenly you are sort of disrupting that by inserting that, and that is a very, I mean, to me that's a very contemporary gesture that
Sure.
you are sort of inserting a foreign element that is actually foreign to this tradition
Exactly, yeah.
into this weave that you have, and bizarrely now the first thing that came to my mind years ago was, oh, this is like John Cage in prepared piano suddenly deciding, I'm gonna like insert that, I don't know,
Yeah.
that book into the piano strings.
Yeah,
that was the
I-
first thing that came to mind.
Even I got a story of it as well because my lecturer, when
Yeah.
I remember that I went to his office and I said, "What shall I do for my thesis for my final semester?" And then he said, "You know what, Anne? I don't know what to do with you. You just do whatever you want to do." It's because I think back then, again, as I said, that a lot of my friends or the rest of the weavers, they're still following, they followed the traditional way of doing it. But I said, no, I'm not going to do it. From the very beginning, I decided that if I want to do something, I might as well do something that, first and foremost, that make me happy and make me feel satisfied about it.
Yeah.
So that's why even my lecturer said, you just do whatever you want to do. And at the end of the day, I got A for my thesis.
You have a very, very open-minded
Yeah, exactly.
lecturer. So, can I ask you, at what point did the weave come off the wall?
Okay, that's
Because that's to me that's the second kind of radical move. The weave coming off the wall.
Well, okay, that's a very good question, actually. You've seen before the Alpha and Omega, which is mounted on the wall, on the wood panel, and then, exactly this one. And then you put it on the wall. And then I'm thinking, after a few years, I was thinking like, I got enough of it. It's like your mom asks you to eat chicken every day. So you're going to get sick of it, isn't it? You feel like you want to eat something else. So that's happened to me as well. I was thinking like, okay, that's nice, but I really want to do something that I want to challenge myself. What's next? So I'm thinking the next thing that I'm going to do, the next series that I'm going to come out with is definitely has to be the opposite of Alpha and Omega. That is where, you know, when you said about the unconventional materials like rakes, you know, whatever you can see on that. Exactly. Rakes, and then you can see belts, and then they have garden utensil, kitchen utensil. I said, whatever I want to do with my new series is definitely going to be the opposite than the Alpha and Omega. So that means if Alpha and Omega just be on the wall and the material is maybe 2-3 different materials, I said my next series totally going to be the opposite. You know, the size definitely going to be bigger. The material is going to be more like bazaar, I think. So, and in a way, you know, it's sort of like, again, as I said, that if Alpha and Omega is night, I want to do the opposite. The new series must be daylight. Or if it is black, the other series must be white.
But were you conscious that with the move of the work off the wall, that you know, suddenly the work is now experienced as literally sculpture most of the time?
Indeed,
Rather,
yeah.
I mean, that's another step away from how one would contemplate textile or woven art, you know?
Sure. And that's I think that's the best part of it, because even though I try to create something different than the previous series, but the DNA of it you still can trace. The original weaving process techniques is actually, if you look at it carefully, is still there. The DNA is still there. So that's why, you know, even though you can't really see it from the picture, that's why you guys have to come on the 9th of May. Yeah, to witness that thing. And then you can see what we are discussing today. So, yeah.
But
however,
why? I mean, there's the work coming off the wall, but also you were talking about why do you choose to use household common utilitarian objects in which to, you know, anchor your weaves?
I found that it is quite sad, because this kind of material we normally just overlooked. You know, it's sort of like, okay, what is the purpose of the rake, for instance? You just do it as that purpose and that's it. And I'm thinking like, that's a shame. I mean, why don't I come up with something? And if I talk to other artists about it, they're probably going to look at me like, are you out of your mind, Anne? But for me, that out of your mind is a nice thing for me. I take it as a challenge, not to prove they're wrong, but to prove to myself, hey, you know what? People say it's quite impossible to do something with this kind of cheap, unconventional materials.
But it's also, I think, within contemporary art discourse, it's also very much, there is a kind of resonance, I suppose, or empathy with the desire, of course, weaving as traditional, as a traditional practice is very much in Southeast Asia associated with women, you know, with literally a marginalized segment of the population. And similarly, they are very important because literally women weave the clothes you wear on.
Yeah, of course.
You know, they are doing all these things, but aside from that, you know, they are in a sense the more marginalized part of a lot of Southeast Asian society. Well, a lot of societies just in general. So just like these household items that you use, they are utilitarian. They do, you know, they clear leaves. You know, you prepare food with them. You clean the house, but that's it. You don't think much of them. I think what's interesting about your work is the collision, the sort of correspondence between these two very functional things that we often take for granted. And what you seem to have done is to have, you know, one, made us all look at them. Look at them in a kind of, gee, I didn't know you could use a rake in that in that way. And like, how many of you would have thought that is it possible to weave a broom? Like literally sort of weave a broom. I think that's really sort of interesting in that sense. So I want to go back to the residency, and to say for both of you to comment a little bit about what I know Livia said a little bit about you know, the purpose of the residency, but what what was different about the residency, and how has that sort of changed the work that we are going to see?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I must say this. I enjoy very much. I mean, it's amazing experience to do the residency with Lana, of course, over there. She helped me a lot, and then the first thing that I learned out of from this residency is how to use a drill. I don't know how to use a drill. I don't even know that thing. And I mentioned to her, I said, what the heck is that? And she says, that's a drill. And I said, and how to use that? And she taught me how to use the drill. And then normally back home, I have people that help me out how to assemble the rakes, to put the structure together. And then after that, I will weave in between of everything. But, now, one of the best things that I learned, the experience that I learned from here is I learned how to use the drill, and I learned how to put the work together. And I think that's very, very, for me, that's very important for me to learn how to do it. And I have to learn from there as well. I learned to create more intricate work, or by using intricate materials such as different type of yarn.
Yeah, I think one thing that's very visible, I mean, what
That's
you say,
huge.
what it meant is the kind of complexity of the work.
Yeah.
Now that you are, well, I wouldn't say learn a new skill. You are exploring a certain kind of way of putting together the work.
right.
Is that the kind of three-dimensionality of the work, particularly the one on the right? I think that is a kind of new thing.
Yeah.
But I want to talk also about the yarn, because we saw. I mean, I didn't realize that actually, as a person who does not weave, I mistakenly thought that these threads, for example, are just threads. But actually, they are more like yarns. They're actually composed of different threads, and that you actually make each yarn out of different threads. Could you say a little bit about what you do and what you did here in New York?
Yeah, it's something that I learned from here is, you guys have a lot of choices when it comes to yarn. I know probably some people don't understand that, but the thing is, back home, I have pretty limited type of yarns that I can work with. But when I got here, like Livia said just now, when we went to AC Mall, I went bonkers. It's because of the yarns over there. It's sort of like you put a girl in a shoe shop. You go crazy about it. And the thing that I learned is because from that different type of yarns that you can get it from here, you can create more different type of yarns on top of that. That means as long as you know the techniques, like I know how to do it, and on top of that, because of the quality of the yarns is totally different, I managed to create different type of yarns on top of different type of yarns. So in a way, like I give birth to a new yarns, which is I found is quite interesting myself.
So what Anne is talking about, if you look at this photo, you can see what we see as threads when you see it in close up is actually made out of different kinds of threads, and they are manually made. I mean, she literally knots or plates, I don't know what is the term for that, each of them together. And the fact that different threads have different weights, some are a bit tighter, some are a bit looser, some are a bit thicker, some are a bit thinner.
Sure.
It's actually very difficult to knot them together. You can try that at home. It's actually, you take different threads. It's very difficult to knot them together consistently. So I think that's the very time-consuming part, but also it's a kind of skill, and there's a lot of artistic judgment. Because there's some variability, as Anne was saying, in each of the threads, right?
Yeah.
like this. So how do you make that choice of what to combine?
Well, it's actually based on color. So no matter what, I think like the rest of the artists
Yes.
or painters, they
Yes.
will choose the color first. Livia, like when we went
It was
to
amazing.
we went to the shop.
She
it's
said, if
sort
I
of
put
like,
3 things together, I'll get this color.
yeah,
Right? It was
yeah.
that
At first,
vision.
I'm not sure whether Livia understood that. By the end of the day, she
No.
said, "Okay, girl, yeah, I get it." Because I said, "Okay, Livia, I want to get white, but you need to help me to find 3 or 4 whites
Yes.
together,
Yes.
so that from that 3 or 4 whites, and
Yes.
then I can just put it together as one." So in a way, it's not only a learning process for me, but it's a learning process for
No,
both
it was
of us.
amazing.
Yeah.
Because really, it was like painting. It was like painting with the yarn.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you-
You know, to watch an artist do that, you come in and you know, Anne already had an idea as to what the coloration had to be in a particular area of the sculpture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, looking at the way she looked at the work, and she said, look, if I twist these 3 together, I get this color.
Yes.
Now, how can you do that with yarn? It's 3 different colors,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
not like a painting, but it is.
Exactly.
But it is.
exactly. And again, as I said, it's very interesting. It's because of the choices that we have over here.
Yes.
It's actually open another dimension of creativity in my head, that it is possible to do it.
Yes.
Which is that is something that I can't achieve back home because I don't have the materials. I don't have enough texture yarns
Yeah.
back home.
So in a sense, the work that we will see up in Hudson Valley, you know, the materials is also very indigenous to this location. You know, so the overall look, I mean, the density, visual density is much heavier.
You know, just to talk to that, I mean, one of the things that I find amazing, you know, you have Anne's coming from Malaysia. It's a different
Yes.
culture. You would think a different sensitivity in terms of the art. But the types of materials she's integrating, and
Yes.
for me, this is, you know, kind of the segue from art that's specific to a culture
Yes.
to art that becomes universal. The materials she's integrating are universal materials. So when she starts working with the pots, the pans, you know, the things, the strainers from the kitchen, or the rake, she's talking to the way I live, and each of the pieces has a memory. You know, once you use an object in your kitchen, or you use it in your backyard, it has the memory of what
Yeah.
you've done with it. And for me, the works are, what makes them so special is that they do have this very universal voice.
Would you now could you say a little bit about the 5 pieces that you made
Oh,
for
okay.
the residency? Because there is you know,
A
this
theme.
yeah, there is a kind of theme, there is a
Yeah.
particular kind of narrative that you
Yeah.
were talking about.
Okay. The theme is actually based. You know, it's about my family. And sorry, I when they offer me to come here, I you know, I almost said no. It's because my mother just passed away when they offered me the residency. So it's pretty difficult for me to be here alone. You know, I know nobody in New York. So I spoke to my baby brother, and then he said, just go. But I just said that I don't know what to do. I have, you know, because I'm still sad because my mother passed away a few months after that. So my baby brother said, hey, you know what? Use the sadness that you're going through now and create as a theme. So that's the reason why that when you look at the work in the museum, it's actually based on my family. So the one that you see on the far right is actually my mother. So that size is really big. It's about 10 feet high, and it's about 7 feet. The width is about 7 feet. So it's actually the love that we have among us, that's the thing that for me, the most important thing that my mother gave it to us is actually the love. And so that's the reason why that the whole body of work is based on my family, and that's the reason why the title is The Greatest Love. Yeah, so
And
that
of
is...
course, the mother figure is the largest.
It's the
She's
she's the
most
queen.
majestic
She's the queen.
figure here. Yeah. So it's at the same time a very personal kind
Sure.
of series for you, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
also
not
a
something
kind
that
of
I just...
celebration of your family.
It's not something that I just imagine.
Yeah.
It's like from the previous series, it's something that, I put the creativity, the imagination into it. But this body of work is really come up from my heart, from, it's because of the love that we have between us. So it meant a lot for me.
Great.
Big time. Sorry.
So going back again, so Livia, like with the residency program, you've done it for quite some time. What has the experience of artists in general been, and especially with regard to, what do you see with the work that comes out at the end of that residency?
I think that as I mentioned before, the residency gives the opportunity for the artist just to focus on the work, to kind of set life aside.
Yes.
And just to know that they're going to have an opportunity to showcase what they produce. I think for me, different residencies offer a lot of different things. But the fact that there's a goal, that in the end there's going to be a sharing with the world of what you produce, helps the artist to grow. And then the fact that there's this kind of space to explore things lets them think bigger. And
When could you say a
lets
little bit
them
about
dream.
what does think bigger mean?
Well, bigger in terms of the size of the works they're producing. Anne's work, Chris Jones, when he came from London, he was making these small pieces. All of a sudden, he's got this huge stagecoach and a horse. Anne has this big mother who's kind of hovering over the space. I think that the greatest gift I think we can give an artist is that the artist can grow. That they have that opportunity to kind of spread their wings and not worry about what's going on around them.
Yes.
To kind of leave responsibility aside for a while. And the artists we've worked with have benefited from that. They've taken advantage of that opportunity. And it's interesting because Peekskill it's not in Manhattan. And you would say, well, why would an artist do a residency not in Manhattan, specifically an hour north of Manhattan? Well, you still have access to the city,
Yes.
but you have that protection of being in a smaller community, of not walking on the street and kind of being bombarded by a lot of noise and a lot of things going on. To have that time to be a little bit introverted, to meditate a bit, to be able to have the breathing time to just look at the work, to be surrounded by trees, to be near the river. That's impacted on people a lot, on the artists a lot, just to have that geographic location.
And you spoke about an artist community in Peekskill.
Yeah.
So how has the artists in the residency or the residency itself interacted with that community over the years?
It's varied from artist to artist. We've had artists that have done series of lectures that have gone to local universities. It all depends on the artist, because the concern is mainly that the artists feel comfortable with what they're doing. And if the artist feels tense because they don't feel like they don't have time to complete their work, then we have to pull back at the museum and let them have that time. Anne has made friends in the community and people who really love her. There's no other word for it. She uses the word love, and she's endeared herself enormously to the community.
It's wonderful.
She's mentioned Lana a few times. Lana has brought other artists to meet her.
Yeah.
She comes into the museum, and as I say, it's like, oh, Anne's here. Everybody says things. Anne's here. So I think being able to make those close, relationships, to know that you have those relationships to come back to.
Yes.
You know that you really have friends on the other side of the world. And the opportunity for artists who live in Peekskill, it is a very large arts community. For them to be able to come in and to see an exhibition like this, to know that it was produced in the city. And because of Anne's work, to be able to look at it and to say, oh, I recognize those things. You know, I know, I use those things. I know those things. I know where she got them. You know, it's like, it creates a wonderful dialogue. And, in terms of the N factor, many of the artists who have come through the museum have gone on to very successful careers. And I think part of it is that they have had that space to grow. You leave art school and you're thrown into the world and you have to produce work. And how does an artist make that space to be able to draw back for a little while and just think and just create? And I think that's what Anne's done.
So now going back to Anne on picking up that point. So
Yeah.
what do you, I mean, when you were here, aside from learning how to drill, but
Yeah.
as an artist, what do you feel in terms of your practice you will take away when you go back to Malaysia, to future kind of projects?
Yeah. What I really want to do for my future work is actually try to bring, instead of put it against the wall, I want to make it more three-dimensional, which is off the wall. So it's more like a real sculpture where everybody can walk around 360 degrees. I think that is something that I want to, again, I want to challenge myself to bring it out to that, from two-dimensional to three-dimensional.
And that is, like, I suppose, really very far away from the days of the loom.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Weavings, as a flat kind
Yeah,
of.
definitely, but still have my DNA, my signature in it, which is the weaving, the traditional way of weaving. It's just the way of presented is going to be
Yes.
different.
Yes.
Yeah, but the DNA of the work is still going to be the same.
So what do you actually, it sounds very obvious, but I think it's worth saying. So what do you feel that audiences or people who look at the work and they realize that, it's woven together, literally. I mean, all these disparate objects are woven together and it becomes the act of weaving transforms it into something else other than, a piece of woven textile. What do you think, what are you hoping that people take away with regard to, I mean, in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia, it's a really traditional.
It's really, of course.
It's really just a part of our life.
Yeah.
Many women, you will know what is weaving.
Yeah.
If you're really, really, from an old household, you will learn somehow a little bit, of what it is and so on. But it's a dying tradition.
Yeah,
In terms of
yeah.
people practicing
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel that your work is sort of, in a sense, also trying to recast that tradition?
In a way, it is. I think it's very important. I mean, back home, especially in Malaysia, I think for the time being, I'm probably the only one that, there are a lot of weavers everywhere,
Yes.
but I am the only one that using that traditional way of weaving and bring it to the next level. So I think it is very important for me, myself, as an artist, to not try to influence, like what I discussed with Lana this morning. A part of to be an artist is not to teach people, is to inspire them. So that is what, for me, is important if they look at my work.
Yes.
It's for them to get some inspirations and maybe just can use whatever traditional technique that they know in terms of craft, in terms of artwork, and try to challenge themselves to bring it to the next level.
But why should we even care about this tradition?
Yeah, I think it's very important, though. It is very, very important.
Why do you think?
It's because I believe that, the thing that make the nation of the country strong is not because of the strength of the armies of the soldiers, it's because of the culture. So that's the reason why that we need to preserve and we need to bring this thing out, and especially teaching it and sharing it with the new generation, with the younger generation, because that's the thing. The culture actually makes the country strong or stronger. Yeah.
So your work, I mean, literally, it's trying to take, you know, what is a very traditional and unfortunately declining
Yeah, of course.
practice,
Even
but,
in Malaysia.
yeah,
even
putting
though
it in
Malaysia
the
it's like
language
that.
of contemporary sculpture, of contemporary sort of installation. You know, I think that seems to be, to me, the core of the practice. So
Sure.
we certainly look forward to going up to see the show, if not at
Please.
the opening, but all the way till September. Yeah.
You use these gobelins in your apartment houses because this is mother, father, because before you show some alpha omega type of fashion fabrics which you probably, or there's a sense like if you dress kimono or something, I don't know how it's named in Malaysia, like this, and you of course use traditional coloristic, and there was a brush, rotating brush, yeah, it means you produce some from wool, like a type of gobelins in Europe was traditionally gobelins or aras, but you do similar production. The first part was to museum, and this is a private, yeah, for family. You said the mother and something.
No, the idea. No, the concept, not the use of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
sir.
not the concept, not the use of it.
You
Yeah,
know this, or
yeah,
maybe you answer.
yeah. That's what she said just now.
Yeah.
Yeah. The later the works that we're going to show.
Yeah,
Yeah, those
yeah.
they are related to images of your family.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a question over there. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
Hi.
Okay, ladies first.
When I look at your work, it sort of looks like a mask to me. So
Yeah.
there's an element of what this gentleman was talking about. You know, the sort of European tapestry. That there's one functionality to that, but there's also, there's a sort of a mask quality to
Yeah,
them. And
yeah.
so I was just sort of curious about, you know, because the lecture is about gender and combinations of gender, and what does that mean in your art?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah, I mean, when I produce my work, it's always like, you know, it must be male or female, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. So that's the reason why that for me is when I produce it, it's always like, when we talk about those relationship, man and female, or boyfriend and girlfriend, is all based on, you know, it's based on love. So it's always love involved in that kind of thing, in that kind of, when I produce the work like that. So the imagery of male or female there is, if you look at it, if you come to the gallery or the museum, you can see it pretty clearly. So this is, you can define this is male and this is the female part.
But they are also very, by this series of work, it's also quite almost like totems.
Yeah, yeah,
already,
in a way,
right?
yes,
There
yes.
that's where the link with I think mask and all that is, because it's very totemic. They are
Yes.
almost. I think your work seems to have become much more also anthropomorphic at a certain level
Sure,
as it started to move further and further away from flat pictorial
Sure, yeah,
depictions,
yeah.
you know, of figures. In fact, I would say your earlier work was much more, for want of a better word, abstract
Yeah,
than
sure.
your later
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
As it becomes more totemic, as you were saying, you know, it becomes much more about kind of physicalization of human
Sure,
relationships
yeah.
as tied together by gender, which is why it becomes, you know, this kind of shape. Whereas if you look at the earlier work, it's much more
Abstract form,
Yeah.
abstract pattern,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
it,
Alpha, omega.
No, there is
No.
no, there's
No,
definitely
yeah.
no.
So
Yeah.
it goes. So it's that's a kind of major transformation. Yeah. But I think we also have to understand, as mentioned in the beginning, that the context of weaving in which Anne comes from, weaving itself is very, very gendered. The men cannot weave. They will do the only time men traditionally touch textile is dirty work. That means the men dye the indigo. The dirty, yeah.
But the rake
Yes.
is a symbol of
Yes.
male work.
Yes.
The
Yes.
duality.
Yes.
The duality of the,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
So that tension always is behind. Anybody else in this? Somebody was on it. Okay.
First, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing
Sure.
your story. And you know, it's incredibly moving and generous of you to
Thank
share
you.
that. And it kind of made the figurative aspect. It explained the figurative aspect of these new pieces, which I was going to ask you about if you hadn't said that. One of the things I see most distinctly in all of your work here, though, is there is this interesting play between mass-produced materials and your hand kind of innovating in its way with them. And I
Sure.
feel like that's a really important part of this conversation, especially as, you know, Malaysia and the entire world, it has really shifted its economy and its emphasis, you know, toward that.
Sure.
And what we think of as traditional is having to be redefined, and craft has to be redefined in that context. So it's very inventive and ingenious, and you know, I love sort of the gaudy color and the weird, you know, you see little bits of plastic everywhere, and just the idea of adapting the rakes to that. One of the things I was going to ask you is, you know, clearly, like, the weaving itself is a reference to tradition and your particular country's traditions, and that kind of horizontal and the grid.
Yes.
In the way that you're using those rakes and setting up the figurative image, does that also refer visually or emblematically to any particular traditional imagery?
Indeed, yeah, that's actually is a very good question. That one, it's actually based in the ethnic group from my country, and we have 13 states in Malaysia. So basically, the image or the shape of my work is actually based on the motif that we have in Sarawak, which is based on the traditional tribal chief design. So the shape of it is actually the stylization of the tribal chief from that ethnic group from my country. So that's the reason why that you can see that kind of sort of like a very like warrior look shape. Yeah.
Yeah. So the works in
Yeah.
it's
something
very
like that.
obvious.
Especially the blue one. You can see on the blue one that kind of shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the blue one is the one that has the swords, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the one that
Yeah.
got swords. Yeah.
So it's very what Anne is reading is very specific. So she's talking about Sarawak tribe, like indigenous culture.
Yeah, exactly. The ethnic group.
Yeah, which is very similar to what you find in Indonesia, in
exactly, in
southern Thailand.
everywhere, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Hence the reference to, you know, almost like totems like that. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Okay. Oh, we're running. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
not, we'd like to again. It's Bear showing again and again. Please go to Peer Skill. There's nothing like the sculptures are extremely complex, and you really have to go up close to see them to realize how complex they are. And as this lady in front mentioned, you know, it's actually quite suggestive, even as a viewer. the juxtaposition of the materials and the way these very common utilitarian, mass-produced, man-made materials are sort of very painstakingly stitched together, you know, and you know, they're very emotional work. So I highly encourage you to go and see them, because I think also with Anne's work, you are reaching a kind of area, you know, in contemporary art that is very, you're almost at a loss for words, because there is a kind of emotional pull.
Sure.
Pull that's very difficult to say this means that means that, but it's a kind of the sensation of the totality is very, very
There's really
strong.
there's a
know?
majestic presence.
Yeah.
When you stand in front of the works, there really